Welcome to our Bible study for Saturday. I am glad to see you all here through the pixels. And one little bit of good news that I have for most of us is that Beltrace is thinking about letting me return to do face-to-face or at least mask-to-mask Bible studies. And chances are good that it won't be too long before I will be hosting Bible studies on site there. As of right now, we're considering keeping it at the usual morning hours that it was before. So that would be 10 a.m. On Saturday mornings. But we would be meeting in the chapel rather than in the third floor TV lounge because we can socially distance in the chapel. But stay tuned for more information on that. I think that will be coming up in a couple of weeks because we were talking about November. Obviously, we will continue to do what is necessary for whatever we can do to keep everyone safe. So this isn't set in stone. We don't have this as a definite thing yet. But I did want to make the announcement that at least we are talking about that. And that's more than we've done for many months. So that's showing some progress, both in terms of our life at Beltrace and hopefully for our entire broader community and country. There are some spikes that are going on, and certainly there are some regions that are hot spots. We are not, I believe, one of those here in Bloomington. But we will do the best we can, and I look forward to being able to see you. And my mask covers my nose. Remember, cover your nose, cover your mouth, but it doesn't cover my eyes, so I can see you. And I am looking forward to that very much. As I mentioned in the video for the Sunday service last time, I was at the wedding for Melissa and Dacry and saw several people there from Beltrace, and it was such a joy to spend time with people. And it made me realize just how much I miss all of you. So without any further ado, of course, I'll launch into my spiel. I can come and visit you even before we start our face-to-face or our in-person. I guess I shouldn't say face-to-face. Well, we are face-to-face even with masks. So face-to-mask and mask-to-face and all of that sort of fun stuff. We'll have Venn diagrams with overlapping circles that we can see. Notice how whenever I do that, you can see a bit of the stuff that's behind me that's poking out from the virtual background, which is rather fun. I'm going to do something here so you can actually see what I'm really sitting in front of. When I have all of these virtual backgrounds on, this is what it looks like behind me normally. I have my Keep Calm and Carry On poster. Stay tuned because I'm going to show you more of that in a moment. And sometimes I have a little hanging piece over here. And of course, I have my green screen here that I can use to enhance the background. But most of the time, for our purposes, I don't need to do that. But so you're getting a real behind the scenes look here. And you can sort of see books stacked on the corner table over there. That's my Iceland collection, by the way. The biblical collection has an entire room downstairs and half of the office over in that direction. So that would not suffice for the biblical collection. I've been doing that for a much longer period of time with many more degrees. And what we're planning to do in terms of continuation for our Bible study is that I will pick up where we leave off in the virtual study if and when we begin to do it in our in-person situation. So we'll just keep calm and carry on. See, I keep that up there for a purpose. And of course, when I'm using the virtual background, like now, you don't see that, but I in fact see that because I got a mirror on the other side of me here, and it's mirror reflecting what is behind me. And in these times, you always want to keep calm and carry on. We're facing an election. Hopefully most of you, if not all of you, have already voted. If you haven't, please, 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 please get your ballots in now because it can take a while for it to be processed by the mail. And you never know where the mail is going to end up. Not saying there's any kind of deliberate plot or anything like that. Even in the best of times, things can get lost and diverted. And of course, as we know, we are in a crunch because there's a higher volume than normal of mail when people are mailing in all their ballots. So vote early. I won't say vote early, vote often. Vote early, vote once, and hopefully your vote will get in there in a timely manner. I'm going to go stand in line and vote probably on Tuesday or perhaps on Thursday. I'm going to be on the radio on Thursday, WGCL 1370, AM 1370, in the afternoon. So if you have time for that. The reason why, and I was going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this Bible study, but I will go ahead and do it now since I've segued into that. One of the things that has happened to me in this past week is I've been on Channel 13 from Indianapolis. You may have seen a bit of that. You may have even caught my broadcast. I guess it's been on now 4 different times for Channel 13. And I was on the morning show and the afternoon news and then the evening news and then another clip somewhere else that a friend said, "Oh, I saw you on TV." So it's pretty much the same clip. I'm not doing newer ones over and over again. They're showing the same video. But I've been on 13, and if you haven't seen it, you're in luck because I'm going to have the interview that I did at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. It's 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and I think it's fun and worth it. So I hope you'll enjoy that. But the reason why I'm going to be on the radio on Thursday is for the same thing, and I'm going to have an article in the Herald Times for the same thing, and I'm going to have an article in one of our Cardon publications. I think it's a blog for the employees for that same stuff. So it's rather interesting how this has sort of blown up. What's blown up, you're asking? Glad you asked. See, if I don't have this in person here, I have to make up the questions and answer them myself. I think some presidential candidates would have preferred that for the debates, but you know, hey, you go with what you've got. I have recruited a lot of celebrities to be part of my virtual classes, and you got to see, if you've been attending our Bible study all throughout, the video that I got from Jamie Farr. I showed it several different times appended to our Bible study and our chapel service, and I know it's scooted around in a couple of different ways also for those at Beltrace. I have 45 of those for Ivy Tech, not all from Jamie Farr. Mostly from science fiction stars, Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and Smallville and other shows you may or may not have heard of. But also I have a real life astronaut, I have a couple of other stars, and I have about a dozen comedians who have put up different videos as well, because I've been involved in comedy. So it's been fun, it's been interesting, and it's caught the attention of some people outside. So I'm going to show you the Channel 13 video at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to share with you a video. I think it's about a 3.5-minute video also of an archaeological dig at a place called Tel El Haman. I believe it's Tel El Haman. The video will correct me if I'm wrong, but it's close to that. I don't have my note up here, but that's because most of us know it by another name. And that's the story that we're going to have in Bible study today. We know it as the city of Sodom. That's what's behind me here. I'm going to cover up the camera here for just a moment so you can get a better picture of this. This is a big ancient city, a Bronze Age city, that was discovered to the east of the Dead Sea. And there is no direct confirmation. I will hasten to say that there's no direct confirmation. There's not a GPS marker saying you have entered Sodom or anything like that here. But this is, by some scholars' accounts, one of the most likely candidates for that city. It's a very large city in the part of the world that the Bible talks about as cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah, and a few other cities that are in that territory. So that's the story we're going to talk about today, because we ended our last Bible study with Abraham, now Abraham, not Abram, because he's now plural. He's going to be the father of many nations. Sarah has been told that she's going to be the mother of multitudes as well. So Abraham is bargaining with God, who has sent off the angels towards Sodom, and they have sort of marching orders to destroy it because of the sinful nature. What is the sinful nature? We'll talk about that in a moment. But Abraham sort of barters God down in God's wrath towards the city. He's like, well, surely if there are 50 people, and we're guessing there were tens of thousands perhaps of people in the city, surely if there are 50 people there who are good, you won't destroy it. And God's like, okay, I won't. And then you go to 45 and 40 and 30 and 20, all the way down to 10. All the way down to 10. And then Abraham doesn't push it too much before then. But Abraham actually has a vested interest. We have to remember that he has a vested interest in this. He has relatives in the city. This is where Lot went. And while Lot was originally described as living outside the city in tents or in other such circumstances, by this point we get the sense that he was actually living in the city itself. And if you hear a little bing here and there, I apologize. My computer alerts are doing things. Also, don't be surprised if we have a guest visit from the kitty cat, because the kitty cat is now at my feet, and the reason why my arm is moving on the side over here is because I'm petting the cat, trying to keep it from jumping up and messing up the microphone. But we might have a visitor during the midst of all of this. In fact, he might be ready to jump up now. Are you coming up here? Yes. No, don't chew on the microphone cable. Yeah, lots of fun. He won't eat. He won't chew on any of the cat toys, but you put something that's expensive there that you don't want him to, and there he goes, talking about sinful natures today, Mr. Wilford. Yes, that's what we're going to talk about in terms of this. Actually, we're not going to just talk about that, but we are in the book of Genesis. And I'm still using, as I've done before, the 5 books of Moses, the translation by Everett Fox, done for the Schocken series. One of my favorite publishing companies. I have lots of Schocken books from my undergraduate days and my Jewish Studies certificate days, and I continue to collect them. I have the philosophies of Judaism, the stories of Judaism, the essence of Judaism, lots of different books on Jewish studies topics that are there. So I've grown to value them because they have reasonably good scholarship, but they also have excellent accessibility. And I think one thing that is sometimes missing in excellent scholarship is good accessibility. What good is an idea if no one can really understand what you're trying to tell them? I've learned that the hard way, both in terms of trying to understand things myself, as well as trying to teach things. So I don't believe in dumbing it down, but I don't think things have to be dumbed down to be made comprehensible. I may be in a minority there, but I hope no one has ever thought that I intentionally dumb things down for people. But sometimes we all need a little bit of help to fully grasp what's going on. And I know that I certainly do in a lot of different topics in a lot of different ways. And I'm sometimes shy about asking for that help. As many of you know, I go to school for lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different things. And right now on the side, just for the fun of it, I'm working on an MBA because I don't have that degree yet. And I'm finding there are some accounting principles, especially in application, and some statistical principles that I could really use help with. And I sometimes feel embarrassed to ask, and I'm working to overcome that. So I encourage you, particularly as we get back into our face-to-face meetings, to bring your questions. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be surprised, however, if I say, I don't know, because I've been studying this stuff at various levels for 50 years or more. And I have advanced degrees and everything you're supposed to have to say this guy knows something. And I still find a lot of things I don't know. And I promise you one thing, I will never lie to you about knowing something I don't know, because that would be part of the sinful nature too. And we're about to talk about that. Chapter 19, Genesis here. The two messengers, remember there were three who came to Abram's tent when he became Abraham around the same time. And two of them departed to come off to Sodom and Gomorrah. Ooh, that was interesting. I waved my hand and magically the light came on. Okay, well, we'll keep that in mind. There are divine forces in the electricity here. The two messengers came to Sodom at sunset, as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he arose to meet them and bowed low, brow to the ground, and said, Now pray, my lords, pray turn aside to your servant's house. Spend the night, wash your feet. Starting early, you may go your way. And they said, No, rather we will spend the night in the square. Now, remember, back in these days, they didn't have Holiday Inn, they didn't have Motel 6, they didn't have Expedia where you can book a night ahead. Typically, travelers traveled with their own bedroll and their own tent if they were lucky, and they made do with wherever they could find and whatever they could make up as a temporary place to stay. And it was a very important thing in the ancient world to grant permission for people to stay in those kinds of situations and to continue to be watchful over them. This is what Lot is doing. This is an important point for the story, by the way. But Lot pressed them exceedingly hard, the text says. So they turned in to him and came into his house. He made them a meal with drink and baked flat cakes, and they ate. They had not yet lain down when the men of the city, the men of Sodom, encircled the house. From young lad to old man, all the people, even from the outskirts. They called out to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us. We want to know them. And here, we're not talking about the sort of King James Version, Cain knew his wife kind of thing. This is a modern translation where it just says no. So we'll get to the idea of sexual impropriety in a moment, but don't jump ahead, because that's one of the problems with a lot of biblical stories, and especially with this one. We already think we know what the answer is, and every time I read through this story, I find something different and something I didn't know before. And that's why I'm using this different translation, because whenever you go through another translation, it makes you think, is that the way it really was? And I've read some of the original Hebrew and some of the Greek and Latin texts as well. And of course, we're always translating in our head. I will translate it into English when I'm reading that. So once again, we're not getting necessarily what the original authors put down. But Everett Fox has used the modern word no here, not in the King James Version idea of it, but in the 20th, 21st century. So Lot went out to them to the entrance, shutting the door behind him, and said, Pray, brothers, do not be wicked. Now pray, I have 2 daughters who have never known a man. This is the other meaning. Pray, let me bring them out to you, that you may deal with them however seems good in your eyes. Only to these men do nothing, for they have, after all, come under the shadow of my roof beam. So Lot, being their host, is now considering it his ethical duty, his moral responsibility to be watchful and be protective of them. Notice here, and this is something that is often glossed over, Lot is offering his daughters out to the mob. That's not exactly what we would consider to be the best kind of thing to do today. That would not be something that would be approved of. And yet what we're seeing here is a host of different issues that are in here. How women are treated differently, how women are treated as property, how women are not valued as much in the ancient world. There's a multitude of issues that are happening right here in just these few verses. But they said, step aside, and said, this one came to sojourn, and here he would act as judge and adjudicate. In other words, they're saying, who does Lot think he is? He's not even a native here. Now we will treat you more wickedly than them. And they pressed exceedingly hard against the man, against Lot, and stepped closer to break down the door. But the men put out their hand and brought Lot into them. We're talking about the men in the house now. And shut the door. And the men who are at the entrance to the house, they struck with a dazzling light, all men great and small, so that they were unable to find the entrance. The men said to Lot, whom else do you have here? A son-in-law, sons, daughters? Bring anyone whom you have in the city out of the place. For we are about to bring ruin on this place. For how great is their outcry before Yahweh, before God. And Yahweh, God, has sent us to bring it to ruin. So Lot went out to speak to his sons-in-law, those who had taken his daughters in marriage, and said, up out of this place, for Yahweh is about to bring ruin to the city. But in the eyes of his sons-in-law, he was like one who jests. Now, here's the thing. We don't know exactly who these sons-in-law are. They are, it would seem, to be either natives of Sodom or at least part of the cities that are here. We don't think, because of the way they're being introduced here, that they were part of the Abraham clan who came along. And it would make sense that they would be less likely to follow Lot if they were from the outside, more likely to follow him if they were already part of the extended family. At verse 15 it says, now when the dawn came up, the messengers pushed Lot, saying, up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away with the iniquity of the city. When he lingered, the men seized his hand, his wife's hand, and the hand of his 2 daughters, because Yahweh's pity was upon him. And bringing him out, they left him outside the city. So in other words, they physically pulled him out. It's like, time for you to go. Sorry you didn't have time to pack. It was then, when they had brought him outside, that one of them said, escape for your life. Do not gaze behind you. Do not stand still anywhere in the plain. To the hill country escape, lest you be swept away. And Lot replied to them, no, pray, my lord. Now pray, your servant has found favor in your eyes. You have shown great faithfulness in how you have dealt with me, keeping me alive. But I am not able to escape to the hill country, lest the wickedness cling to me and I die. Now pray that the town is near enough to flee to and is so tiny. Pray, let me escape. Is it not tiny, and stay alive? He said to him, here then I lift up your face in this matter as well, by not overturning this town of which you speak. Make haste, escape there, for I am not able to do anything until you come there. Therefore the name of this town was called Zoar, or tiny. So we have more than one place. We have Sodom, we have Gomorrah, we have other cities, and we have towns. So just like in today's world, we have Bloomington as the big city. We have Unionville and Ellettsville. Sometimes we have really tiny, tiny towns. the sort of the one stoplight town, and sometimes not even a stoplight, just a stop sign. Indiana is full of those little sort of incorporations that sort of have a church and a convenience store and a stop sign. And then you're like, that was a town? There's even a town called Messick in Indiana. It's sort of somewhere over between Newcastle and Muncie. I look it up on the map every now and then to see if it's still there. I've never actually been through it, but I've had friends who have been through it. Apparently, my first friend who went through it was looking for it and was through it before she realized she'd gone through it. And she had to turn around and go back and look. And again, it just had a church and a shop. And I'm not even sure if the shop was open. So this tiny little town, Lot is saying, I can't survive out there on my own. I'm not a survivalist. I don't have what it takes. And can I go to this small town over here? Will you spare this small town? So again, just like Abraham was bargaining, Lot is also bargaining. Let's leave this one aside over here. And Zoar then became his town of refuge. Cities of refuge, towns of refuge. This is not an uncommon idea in the Hebrew scriptures. We had that starting out with Cain, looking for the cities of refuge. Verse 23 says, now the sun was going out over the earth as Lot came to Zoar, but Yahweh rained down brimstone and fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Coming from Yahweh from the heavens, he overturned those cities and all of the plain, all those settled in the cities and the vegetation in the soil. This, to my ears and to many other modern ears, listeners, readers, sounds like a volcanic explosion. That's, if I didn't know what magma and lava were, I might say fire and brimstone. Quite frequently in mythology or in artistic renderings of what a hell or a Hades or that kind of place would be with fire and brimstone, a volcano is depicted. In fact, volcanoes, I've seen volcanoes in Iceland. I've seen the entrance to hell because there's a volcano that was designated as an entrance to hell in various lore. There's also one in Italy that was considered to be the place where you are entering because it's fire and brimstone. So of course, that would also explain how cities like this get buried and how cities like this get preserved a bit. Pompeii was buried by the lava spewing out and the ash spewing out from Vesuvius and remained very well preserved into the 20th century when major excavations were able to bring it back to life, as it were. And I have a cat once again, so we may yet have a Wilford visit. Verse 26 has one of the better known parts of this story. Now Lot's wife gazed behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. That's it. That's the whole of it. We tend to think of that as being a lot more because it seems to be a significant storyline, a significant part of this. But the truth is, that's it. We're not told anything more. We're not told anything more about why she did it either. We put in regret. We put in other kinds of emotions. We put in other motivations. But in fact, we're not told that in the bare text here. Those are things that come later, attributions, later ascribing. So here we are. This has happened. Some of you I know have been to the Dead Sea. I've been to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is also the Great Salt Sea. And it's dead because it has such a high salinity, a high salt content. As the water evaporates, it leaves behind salt pillars. And of course, that's a natural forming feature in this area. Salt pillars don't last for very long. They can last a couple of years. They can last maybe up to a couple of decades. Not really going to last much longer than that because a rainstorm will come along windstorms will come along, the water levels may rise again. They do go up and down somewhat, and salt's dissolvable. Even even as it gets into a highly crystallized form, eventually it can wear away. So, no chance, no real chance that a salt pillar has been there for 5,000 years or 4,000 years or even 3,000 years. We're not even talking a couple of hundred years typically. And yet, if you go to the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, and you have the right tour guide, one of the things they're going to do is point around and say, and there's Lot's wife. And then if you go with another tour guide on another tour where they also have other salt pillars, he's going to say, there's Lot's wife. And if you've been watching these videos and listening to my Bible studies in the past, when I've talked about finding the Tower of Babel, and the tour guide who pointed to the ziggurat and said, that's the Tower of Babel. And then a few days later, another tour guide pointed to another ziggurat in another part of the country and said, that's the Tower of Babel. And by the third time I saw the Tower of Babel, what's going on here, I asked? Well, once again, tourists will tip better if they see something from the Bible, and they want to see this. It makes sense that this would be here in this territory because these are natural formations. It makes sense that this would be part of the memory of the story here because it's part of nature now as well. Now, as this was happening, we have sort of, like if this were a movie or a television show, you now switch to the other characters watching what's happening. Abraham started early in the morning to the place where he had stood in God's presence. He looked down upon the face of Sodom and Gomorrah and upon the whole face of the plain country and saw. Here the dense smoke of the land went up, like the dense smoke of a furnace. Sounds like a volcano to me. And this is a volcanically active and earthquake active part of the world. Thus it was when God brought to ruin the cities of the plain, that God kept Abraham in mind and sent out Lot from the overturning, when he overturned the cities where Lot had settled. So Lot got lucky. He had the right family connections. He got the right text message, oh, better get out of here. Get out of here quickly. Except even then, he wasn't willing to go. He had to, it seems, literally be dragged by the hand. He and his wife and his daughters, his sons-in-law, well, sorry, they didn't get the right ticket. So it's sort of interesting that this happens. Why did this happen? We have the sense that there is sexual immorality going on. That has been the running motif of Sodom and Gomorrah in the biblical text, as well as traditions around the biblical text, both in Judaism and Christianity, for a very long time. There have been modern ideas that the main sin of Sodom is not one of sex, but of lack of hospitality, inhospitable attitudes, not being willing to protect strangers and honor the integrity of strangers. I can buy that to a point because, okay, they're disrespecting them, but how are they disrespecting them? And the disrespect seems to be, once again, in a prurient, in a sexual nature. Why else would Lot be offering his daughters? But then we have to wonder, just how moral or ethical is it to be offering the daughters? That would not be something any modern father would do. That would not be something any modern father would do. Nor would it be something anyone's house guests would expect of their host to do. So it's really part of a different time and a different world. Now, the thing that is behind me here is a ruin that has been found in the part of the world that would match the description that is just here in our text, buried under centuries of rock and dust and debris, ash and lava and other natural disasters. And one of the things that we can also see is that it's quite huge for a Bronze Age city. And when I say Bronze Age, I'm meaning we break things into different ages of the kinds of tools that people were making and using at that time. And bronze came before iron because bronze could be shaped and developed into armor and swords and other kinds of tools at a lower temperature than iron. Iron took uh, more energy. It took higher temperatures and more effort to do. It came along later. And iron would eventually displace bronze because if you have an iron sword, it cuts right through a bronze shield. So Iron Age stuff is actually closer to us than Bronze Age. Bronze Age is quite significantly older. And of course, as usual, there are going to be sort of early, mid, and late kinds of things. My commentary on this particular site and the stories that we're reading today come from what's happening here in Everett Fox's book. It says, on the colorful story of Lot and Sodom and in flight from it adds a great deal to the Abraham cycle. On the one hand, there is the portrayal of Lot's continuing his uncle's tradition of hospitality. So this is something that Abraham would do as well. Notice, right before this, we had the story of strangers coming to the tent, the same strangers, by the way, 2 of the 3, and being welcomed graciously, welcomed hospitably. That is something that Lot does also that the rest of the city of Sodom does not do. Even to the extent of being willing to sacrifice his own daughters. On the other hand, Lot comes across as timid and fearful. In fact, the word pray, which is noted in chapter 18 as a hospitality term, and which serves that function as in verse 2 here as well, is used later in this chapter in a way that almost suggests whining. Thus, he once again brings Abraham's personality into a sharper focus. So when we use the word pray, we can talk about prayer, but we can also think about it sort of, and it's almost like Sherlock Holmes, pray, be seated. You're not saying, okay, sit down and pray. That's a different kind of thing. It says, the crimes of Sodom and Gomorrah are at last indicated more openly. Abuse of the sacred duty of hospitality and sexual immorality. So I'm more in agreement with Everett Fox here. There's some of both of that going on, I believe. The latter theme returns at the end of the story with the incident that takes place at the instigation of Lot's daughters. We're going to get there next week, so stay tuned for that. So we have quite a number of things that are in here. The final section in the Sodom and Gomorrah story recounts the origins of 2 of Israel's neighbors, the Moabites and the Ammonites. As traditional enemies, they are not treated very kindly, any more than the ancestors of the Canaanites were in chapter 9. So one of the things we see is that this is a rather shadowy place, a shadowy part of the world. But this is a part of the world where these kinds of ruins are all over. And they would have been, see, they're several thousand years old to us, but anyone living in David's Jerusalem, anyone living in Jesus' Jerusalem, would also have these ruins all around them that have been there also at that time for 1,000 or 2,000 years. By the time we're getting to Jesus, we're 2,000 years away from this. How do we explain how those cities got there? How do we know what they were? These are part of the origin stories of the people of Israel, and that becomes an important thing. And not just for this, but for others as well, because the Philistine cities would have been buried under hills, tells. That's you sort of look around as you're traveling around, and some hills look natural and some don't quite look so natural. That's one of the places where you find when people built a city, they would build the next level and the next level and the next level up. We do that here. When we tear down buildings, we don't sort of go out into the field and leave stuff. We build up and up and up. And over the course of time, especially in the ancient world where they didn't always get rid of all the foundations beforehand, they would build up. And so when the last layer is abandoned, it gets covered over with a hill. Those are called tells in Israel, in Judea, in Galilee, throughout Syro-Palestine. You'll get it in the West Bank, and to a lesser extent in the countries around modern Israel as well. But we have those that are there. And how did they get there? These are part of the stories that are there. So I'm going to break here and show you the video that I was mentioning before on the story of Tel El Haman. And this is really an excavation project update. What it will really tell you is from the archaeologist perspective, what they're finding. He's not going to say definitively, yes, we have found Sodom, because here's the city placard, here's the name piece. We're guessing that if this isn't it, this is what it would have looked like. Think about fast forwarding 3,000 years from now, 4,000 years from now. And let's say nobody lives in Boston anymore, no one lives in New York anymore, no one lives in Philadelphia anymore. But if you don't know one city from the other and they've fallen into ruins, you could be forgiven for confusing one for the other, because they've got roads and skyscrapers and bridges and tunnels and other things. All three of them do. You could, and they're roughly in the same part of the world. So that's what's sort of happening here. So whether or not this is Sodom, I don't know. But could it have been? Certainly. Stay tuned afterwards for a bit more from me.
It's good to have you here at Tel El Haman today. It's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm standing in a working square. It's not real pretty right now. We still have the picks and we still have the tools around. We're still in the process of cleaning out what is the earlier phase of the gateway area. And so I'm standing in the gateway of Sodom, and the Genesis 10 gate, which goes all the way back way before the time of Abraham, the opening is from here to here, and you can see these mud bricks right here. This is the face of the wall of the entryway, and so the central access, you'd walk right into the city from this direction and in. But something happened. They had a big earthquake, and when that earthquake happened sometime around 2000 BC, all of this stuff came down. You can see that all of these mud bricks, now we've cleaned them out here, but you can see all these reddish mud bricks from fire. These bricks came down from the towers and crashed into the gate area, filling up the early Bronze Age gateway. And what the city fathers decided to do at that point was to build a completely new set of fortifications, to do away with the old gate system, and to build a much more elaborate, more complicated system during the Middle Bronze Age, which is the time of Abraham. So the Middle Bronze folks, what they did was they literally left these stubs here, but they dug out the mud brick that had fallen in the gate chamber to here, and they filled it all with a massive amount of stone, just loose stone, dry laid stone, to fill in the entire gateway to create a drainage system for their own gateway, which was going to sit above it. So they came and they built a massive tower. They cut right through this old mud brick. They cut the old mud brick and they built a massive new left tower, and the other side a massive new right tower. If you look at this, this is the old early Bronze Age brick. This is the new installation of the Middle Bronze Age brick. You see the different colors. And they built massive towers on each side, covered over the old gate with a new road, and made a new entry into the city during the time of Abraham. So that's been pretty exciting here. We actually are looking down here at the foundation of the first city gate and city wall system right here. So this is the very earliest stuff. Here's the original opening. Here's the pile of stuff in the opening, the pile of collapsed bricks. So Sodom wasn't just destroyed in the time of Abraham. It had been destroyed by earthquakes several times through its history, but yet they rebuilt as fast as they could. And so it's the same people building over and over and over again. So here we have about 1,500 years of history of the city of Sodom. And the terminal destruction then would be about where my head is. The level of the road from the time of Abraham was about here above my head. And this is the old road, the old entry to the city when we go back to Genesis chapter 10. So that's my report from the Gateway of Sodom. 1,500 years of gateway right here at the Tal Hammam excavation project in Jordan. And
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. And it is interesting the way archaeologists work, and I got to participate in an archaeological dig way back when in some of the Philistine cities with Trudy and Moshe Dothan. When we get to that part of our text, I will talk about that as well. But it's interesting to look at what they're finding and a little bit about how they're figuring out what it is they found. Now, next week, we're going to continue this. Next week might actually end up being our last virtual setting if we do start up again in November with our face-to-face or mask-to-mask meetings. But we'll talk about Lot and his daughters. We'll talk about the origins of the Moabites and the Ammonites. And then we'll be shifting from there back to the Abraham story. And we'll see an incident with Abraham and a local king. And then we get to finally meet Isaac, Yitzhak. So I thank you for being part of our Bible study virtually again today. And remember, I want to come and visit you, and I can come and visit you any day. So remember, let Melissa know, let Barbara know, let me know. We'll figure out how I can get there to see you. And now, as I promised, I am going to show you the video from Channel 13 so that you can see what has created a little bit of a buzz, a little bit of a stir from my celebrity project. So I appreciate your attention, and I hope to see you through the pixels again tomorrow at chapel and next week at Bible study.
New this morning, with so many classes going virtual, college professors across the country are trying to figure out new ways to make their classes more exciting. And it looks like one associate professor down in Bloomington at Ivy Tech may have cracked the code. His name is Kurt Messick, and he hit up celebrities online asking them to send videos to his classes. In 4 weeks, he got 45 personal videos from celebrities. So I just had to ask Kurt, what's your secret?
So Kurt, tell me, what does interviewing celebrities have to do with teaching astronomy and earth science at Ivy Tech in Bloomington?
Well, I think there's a natural tie-in between science fiction and science. Almost everyone who knows science fiction and vice versa. And one of the things I found to be rather remarkable is that several of the celebrities that I've got to give me videos actually majored in science before they ended up being in science fiction. Robert Picardo, who was the doctor on Voyager.
Greetings, intrepid students of astronomy and earth science at Ivy Tech Community College in Bloomington, Indiana.
Jerry Ryan, who was 7 of 9 on Voyager.
I actually, when I went to college, had to decide between majoring in theater or majoring in biomedical engineering.
Chekhov from the original series. Walter Koenig studied pre-med.
And I went to school in Iowa, not far from Indiana.
So there's a natural tie-in there.
Kurt.
Hello, Mr. Shatner. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, a neighborhood I know. What a joy it is to talk to you.
Well, Professor Kurt, you got Captain Kurt, William Shatner. I mean, how did you get him to come on with
It's
you?
a voyage of discovery. The same way the Enterprise was supposed to be on a voyage of discovery, so your mind is on a voyage of discovery in science.
Some people, they know what to say, but they don't quite know how to say it. He knows how to say it.
My students will love this. We're mostly doing online things because of the virus.
Carry on, people. This will be over before you know it.
Give me, how many people have you interviewed for your class?
Christopher Lloyd.
Great Scott. Hi, everybody. This is Doc Brown here.
He made, I think, the biggest splash.
Go for science, study astronomy, and Kurt Messick will be very, very happy.
LeVar Burton.
I married a Hoosier from Fort Wayne, so we're practically family.
John Cleese from Monty Python.
I think astronomy is an extraordinary subject because it's one of the great mysteries. You know, it's why are we here?
He was my very first one. And he was the one who gave me the inspiration to do this for my classes. And the students just sort of went wild at it. They're like, you're talking to John Cleese. And it really gives them a shot in the arm because they think, wow, these people care about me and these people are impressed with me. I think a lot of times we don't realize that there's value and worth in what you're doing, even if you're not the mega star.
Bye-bye.
Live long and prosper.
In addition to researching science and astronomy, Kurt is also a stand-up comedian, so he used his contacts in comedy to get a hold of John Cleese, and everything kind of snowballed from there. What he really wants now is to get Patrick Stewart from Star Trek: The Next Generation. So if anyone out there has Patrick Stewart's cell phone number, please let us know, okay? You got it? Okay, good. Chuck's got the connection right there. We can get this going. But that's just, you know, Julia, it's a great example of a college professor saying, you know what? Anything goes in the pandemic. I'm going to try to get some celebs on here, you know?